All right, episode 2. We have with Jade, and you're going to hear a lot of her story from alcoholism to where it took her with her eating disorder eventually and sobriety and all her different treatments. She's been through a lot, but she's also found a lot of answers. You'll see yoga, meditation, just 12 steps even. We talk about a lot of different things in this hour. I'm glad you guys are liking it so far. I'm doing it for everybody that's been through the struggle, knows what it's like, so they don't have to feel so alone. That's like one of the hardest parts about, being in addiction is you feel alone. So at least, when we're doing these podcasts, we're telling our stories, we're being honest about our recoveries, and we all have different recoveries, but the main thing is that we're not using anymore. You'll see. Yeah, it's a very good interview. We talk about a lot. We both have the same kind of ideals about how recovery looks and how honest we should be in recovery with ourselves and with other people. So it's such an important thing. I really enjoy talking to her, and I hope you enjoy too. Keep in mind, it is progress, not perfection, for a reason. The cameras decided to stop working. We have 3 cameras, and they all stopped working for the last 2 minutes. I don't know why. The batteries weren't even dead, and they were still rolling when I cut them off. So I'm not sure. I'm doing this all myself right now. I don't have a producer on the other side. I do all the editing, do all the interviewing, the recording. So bear with me. We'll figure this out as we go. I just don't want to not put out episodes just because they're not perfect. I feel like it's more important to get the episode out, and we'll figure out the rest as we go along. So I hope you enjoy. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy it. This way, it helps other people to find it. That's all it really is. Whenever we say like and subscribe, it's because that's how the algorithms work, and it helps us out. So enjoy. Welcome, Jade, right?
Yes.
Nice. Well, I didn't meet. I met you the other day. So you've been sober how long now?
10 years. My sobriety date is December 14th, 2010. That's 10 years. Almost 11. Okay.
You'll be 11.
Yeah.
You'll be turning 11 in December.
Yeah.
Now, what was was it alcohol? Was it drugs?
Alcohol and drugs, both.
Where did you start with?
Alcohol.
How old?
16-ish, probably. 15. I don't know. No, I think in middle school. Between 13 and 16.
Did it get out of hand at a certain point? Did it gradually...
It wasn't gradual. The first time I ever drank, I got drunk and got alcohol poisoning. And the very first thought that I had was the more the merrier. And so if that doesn't scream, substance abuse, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I mean, so the first time, what were you drinking that you got alcohol poisoning the first time?
Southern Comfort Straight.
That'll do it. And you were like a young teenager?
I was very young, and throughout my whole drinking career, I couldn't even smell it. I never drank it once ever again.
Yeah, I haven't drank Bacardi-O since I was 16 when it took me to the hospital.
Yeah.
I love the bat on the thing. I always wanted that as a tattoo, the Bacardi bat.
Yeah.
But I could never drink Bacardi-O again since.
Bacardi-O, I know Bacardi 151. I used to drink. You could set that stuff on fire, but...
Yeah, the 151's a lot stronger than the Bacardi-O. Bacardi-O is just a standard Bacardi.
Is it wrong?
Yeah. Just a standard Bacardi just tastes like orange. Bacardi-O, and it had an orange, and what happened was it was the night before Easter when I was 16, and I grew up in Jersey, we drank in the woods, during the house parties, we drank in the woods, and I showed up a little bit late. So what do you do when you get late? You play catch up.
Yes.
So this was back, 15 years ago, almost 20. But we all had the Kyocera phones, and all we could do was play Snake or watch the timer. So they would time me in how much I could chug out of that Bacardi bottle. And I was, 15, 20, just straight like a bottle of beer. Within 10 minutes, I was passed out against a tree. And we were in the woods. So they used a bike ramp to roll me onto it from bikers back there. And then carried me out of the woods because somebody had already called the ambulance. And then the cops were showing up. So and then they dropped me because they got scared of the cops and they all ran. So I'll give my dad credit for the best punishment I could ever think of. This was sophomore year, the end of it, And I wasn't grounded. I didn't lose my curfew. It was that I wasn't allowed to sleep out for the rest of high school. That was his. I could not sleep over a friend because that was the guys that night. I was sleeping over a friend's house, so I was not allowed to sleep out for the rest of high school, and he stuck to it. I mean, the next winter, we were in a bad snowstorm. And I was at a friend's house, and I was like, I can't walk home. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt now. You can't drive. State of emergency. Yeah. He's like, you know the rule. You're walking. I swear I haven't grown hair on my legs since because of how cold it was walking home that night. But, I learned my lessons, though, that's for sure. I never drank Bacardi like that or any hard liquor like that again in my life.
Yeah.
I went out of control with pills a lot, but that was down the line. So you got it early on, and then was it college that you took off?
No, when I was a teenager, I took off I have dual diagnosis, so I have a lot of mental health and including an eating disorder, cutting, all that. So I started that around 13, but I just kept doing it. I automatically took off as soon as that happened, and
was that the aha moment they talk about in AA? That was like your, what do they call that in AA when it's like your first, and it's like your there's like they had like a term for it. You're like awakening, or you're like something when you first discovered
like
it.
Rock bottom?
Oh no.
Okay.
There was like a term that they used for when you discovered.
First drink I had. I remember the more the merrier. I was so happy. I was so elated. Well, the first half, the second half, I was laying on the ground puking, but not able to move.
So like your first time you drank, you're like, oh, there's the solution to all my mental health problems.
Yes, yeah, and I was undiagnosed, so I was self-medicating, and I didn't grow up in a very conducive environment. So my mom was very mentally ill. She wasn't well, and then my mother and my father had a codependent relationship. My father didn't live there. We were stuck with my mentally ill mother. My dad has narcissistic tendencies. You smush that together, and then it just
you get Jade.
Yes, and then this is what it creates. Yeah, so also there's genes that run in my family. There's alcoholism on both sides. So it skipped my brother and my sister, and I was blessed with it. So yeah, there's that. And then, it just got so hard between my mother and I. My mother actually started disappearing from the house. So my dad didn't live there. And my mother started disappearing from the house, for weeks at a time. And it started when I was in middle school. And then one time she just left and she didn't come back. So it was just my sister and I living in this house. And my mom was a hoarder. So there was just stuff everywhere. And
how old were you at the time?
16.
Okay.
And then, so to me, I was like, hell yeah, and I just drank, and I partied, and drank some more.
Come on over, I have a free house, empty house.
Yeah, first, later, I obviously understand that wasn't the best tactic, and it really wasn't good for me, but, at the time, it was quite amazing, but now in hindsight, I realize it was better, I think, that my mom did move out, because it was so conflicting and unhealthy. I think it wasn't good for both of us,
Sometimes when you have two people in the same place that deal with the same kind of mental health, you clash a lot. You would think you would get along swimmingly because you could understand, but there's really not understanding when you're in it.
Yeah, when you're in the thick of it, yes. Yeah. There's and I'm a teenager. I'm just responding. So I had a big temper. I had, hit things, cut things, cut myself, burn myself. A very angry person, and mostly I just drank. I discovered pills like Xanax and things like that. Thank goodness, I really didn't like the feeling of Oxycontin or method, all the opioids. I really didn't like the feeling of that. Thank goodness.
I can tell you. Thank God.
Yeah, and then methadone, I never tried that. Thank goodness. I did try cocaine. I could not handle cocaine. I was no.
You're already up.
Yeah, I was oh my God. It was absurd. I only did it a couple times, but I tripped a lot. I don't regret tripping because it opened up my mind a lot. But
I would agree with that.
Yeah, wholeheartedly.
Was it acid or shrooms or both? What was
what
was your preference? But
I like mushrooms. Acid is so abrupt. Yeah, and I liked mushrooms.
Yeah.
And You know, I did Molly, like MDMA, like ecstasy and all that. And I was like, I like this too much. So I had to, like, you know, I have a chemical imbalance in my head, and that just puts so much serotonin in you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I love this. It's like loving a pill. But I was like, I got to stay away from that because
Well,
I just
especially
liked
with
it
an
too much.
imbalance, the
Yeah.
MDMA, it's almost like a bad. You can get stuck.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
for a long time.
It burns holes in your brain.
Yeah, it
Like,
does.
literally. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
burns your
it's.
holes in your brain.
So how old are you now? Like when you're just like trying everything.
Uh, over 21.
Okay.
That's when I started doing everything. It didn't really, I forget the first time that I tripped or did anything like that. I think the first time I took acid, I was fine. And then somebody, you know, it was back in the day when you don't know what's in weed and,
Yeah.
and you can't really pick anything.
No.
And so a friend, like, we smoked weed, but it was laced with PCP, and he didn't tell me, so I had a horrible trip. It was really bad. So I couldn't even, like, smoke any weed or anything like that because it would just trigger things.
Wet.
But
We
then,
called that wet in Jersey. Like
Wet.
when somebody would put PCP mix and present it as weed.
Yeah.
We would call that was the term was wet,
Yeah.
and because it was like laced. And I've been dosed with that twice. Once at a Halloween party in 2008, right after the Phillies parade,
Yeah.
and I was tripping balls. I didn't know what happened. I was throwing up everywhere because I was drinking so much that day.
Yeah.
And then the other time I was tricked into it, you know, late, whatever. We were smoking out of a Gatorade. I should have known, out of a Gatorade bottle at a concert at Blink
Yeah.
182, and it was pouring
yeah.
rain at this concert. I didn't
Yeah.
bring anything inside with me but my cigarettes and the concert ticket.
Yeah.
And I have to say it was one of the best experiences of my life. but I know how bad it is from the other experience that I was just
Yeah.
like, I'm going to give this guy a pass because it's raining and I'm just going to enjoy it. The first time I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And the second time I did, so I recognized that. And from my experience with like acid and shrooms, I was like, I just need to embrace this right now. Because if I don't embrace this,
Yes.
this is going to be horrible.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, like, when you're dosed like that, if you don't embrace it and you fight it, it's that
Yeah.
fighting that causes that spinning out.
Yeah, it's definitely something. So after a while, then I did shrooms, and I really liked them a lot better. And then I was fine again, but it was just, but all the other stuff that came with it, you know, it just, that stuff I didn't mind and I appreciated. It's just the other stuff, like when I was drinking, I punched my best friend in the face one time, and I don't even remember it. I usually brown out. I call them brownouts. Like, I'm so drunk that I'm lying on the floor, or sometimes just laying there, like, puking, and people would dump me in a bathtub. And then, you know, and I was still, like, conscious and cognizant. But this time, I just blacked out, and I wore a lot of rings. And, you know, I woke up in his bed, and he's like, you gave me a black eye. I'm like, what are you talking about? I did not. And he had a black eye. I was like, oh my God, you know. And I was acting, I guess, so I said some very harmful, mean things, to the point as they didn't tell me what it was because it was so bad. And you know, these were heavy drinkers, and they didn't want to drink with me, you know. And that was the first time maybe I should slow down kind of situation. I mean, there's points where one time I got so messed up, and I went to go outside of my friend's apartment, and I laid on Bloomsburg and Main Street. I couldn't move. I was laying there on the ground puking again, and I remember somebody like walking over me and being like, well, that's a weird place to sleep. You know, and then so I crawled up the stairs, and then, like, you know, luckily they left her apartment door open, and I, you know, laid there. But it's just craziness like that, just not acting. You know, it got to a certain point where after doing all this stuff, there was this turning point, and my rock bottom, quote unquote, and I haven't drank since, and it was just an experience. I was going to do something that's normally not in my nature, and I got really, and in order to do it, I got really, really drunk. I took some Xanax, I smoked a bunch of weed, and I was like, I'm going to do this. Luckily, I couldn't do it, but luckily, there was some kind of conscious thing going on, and I woke up, I'm like, I don't like who I am. I'm a monster. Like, I was slovenly, and I'm like, I don't ever want to do this anymore. I apologized to the person, and I didn't drink since then.
Did you that when you got into meeting? What was it that got you into meetings then? Was it that?
Yeah, pretty much. And my grandmother said something about it. So then I was like, yeah, okay. At first, it didn't really stick, and then I went out after a year, and then it just went. I just after drinking, it just went. I like slowly get back into it, so it sneaks up on me. But then I was like right back where I was, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And with the self medication, like I have like severe like mood disorders like body dysmorphia and bulimia, atypical anorexia, borderline personality disorder, ADHD. Everybody's diagnosed with ADHD though. Um, there's another one. But I can't remember. Anyway, I have a list, and they're very complex disorders, and I wasn't medicated properly.
Yeah, and up until even still today, like they don't know which medications each person needs when it comes to mental health. It's really a trial and error for everybody. You could be sitting next to two different people that have the exact same diagnosis,
Yeah.
but you're all on different medicines.
Yeah.
And it depends on what part of your diagnosis you're in and what part of the trials you're in of trying this. All right, let's wean down this. Let's try you on this now. That didn't work. We're going to wean you off. We're going to, a lot of it can be, and that's even more exhausting for somebody with any kind of disorders because you're already battling stuff. Now you're battling the medications.
Yeah. I actually, I work part-time just because it's just because of my mental health. It's very challenging, and I did try 2 full-time jobs. One, I had a mental breakdown, so for like a year, I was not okay. And then the second one, though, I ended up in the psych ward, like my first inpatient. They found out I had hypothyroidism, which can cause depression and everything like that, so they put me on that. That was helpful, but then they put me on Celexa, and I was so sleepy. I'd sleep for 14 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day, and it helped, but eventually got to a point I'm like, this is making me groggy, like after a couple of years. And somebody told me about Lamictal, which is a mood stabilizer. So I went on that and went off the antidepressant, and I was so much better. Like I feel so much better. It doesn't give me a lot of side effects, so that was very nice. And there actually is this thing. It's called gene site test, but they test your DNA to let you know what kind of medications would be better for you and which ones wouldn't be, which ones would give the most reactions, which won't. It's kind of interesting. They just swab your cheek. But all the antidepressants I tried, and I was only on them a couple weeks, and the doctor's like, well, you should stay on them. I'm like, I'm telling you something's not right. So lo and behold, all of the antidepressants are in the I recommend not taking these categories. So like all of them, all the ones that I tried. So it's kind of interesting how that worked out. But so SSRIs don't necessarily work for me, so I'm on a mood stabilizer, and that's good.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like our thing is called progress, not perfection. You're not going to get it, in the first time, and especially with mental health, and we're now making it okay to talk about in the last couple of years.
Yes.
But before that, even 5 years ago, you couldn't openly be like, "Oh, I'm depressed today."
Yeah.
People would look at you like you got 3 heads. You're like, "Well, then don't talk to me about it." You know what I mean? Like, it's only lately in the last couple of years it's actually acceptable to be like openly like asking for help and talking about it without people looking at you. Even people still look at you weird. I mean, I get looks when I say what I do.
Yeah.
Like, you spend all day doing mental health stuff? Yeah, I do. Like, I love it. I love talking to people. I love finding out what helps people because, obviously now that you dropped alcohol, like, how did you get through stuff then? Because, like, that was your solution of medicating before, and you're trying all these different medications, but obviously you're still staying sober.
Yeah, I went on an antidepressant, I think, right before I stopped drinking. I still think I drank a little bit. But honestly, yoga really helped me a lot, and so did the antidepressant. Actually, yoga changed my life. The first class I ever took in college of yoga, I had a spiritual experience and knew it was my path. I immediately, like a year later, I went into teacher's training and I got my first certification, a 200-hour Hatha Yoga Instruction certification, and just to change my life, like learning how to deep breathe helped me with my anger. It gave me insight into myself, and I use it as a major tool to this day with different factors like chakra system and what have you. But it's a slowly but surely process, and I think it was broken down into layers. So first I got sober, and then like a year later, I'm like, okay, you know, my cutting and self-harm was an issue, and I had a boyfriend. It didn't really hit home how much it bothered people until, you know, I was living with a boyfriend and he reacted. He wasn't okay. He didn't know what it was. To me, I'm not committing suicide. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, man, I just want this pain to go away. Like, cutting, you know, there's a whole thing about it, but
No, I get it. I don't do it to that point. I do it with another thing where if I stub my toe, I will take my hand and smack it against the wall to transfer the pain.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and my wife's always like, "What are you? Can you not? Because you're gonna break your hand one of these times. Or if I hurt my hand, I will hurt something else on my body that I know won't permanently hurt me, but it will like transfer the pain away, and it won't hurt me as much where it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of like, so she goes, you know, you can just like take Tylenol, right? You can just rest or put some ice on it. You don't have to hurt another part of your body. I'm like, yeah, but this is instant.
Yeah.
So I understand that part of it. I haven't gotten, I haven't, I probably won't because I'm talk about it so much, but I do, understand the whole, like, I need to take this pain away right now, and this is the only solution I have for it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of guilt. I had a lot of guilt and shame and not liking myself, and that was a piece of it. But my boyfriend saw that I did it, and he wasn't okay. He couldn't sleep. He didn't know what was happening. And right then and there, I didn't realize how much it affected people until, like, he just was not okay. And then so I was in remission from that for many years. Every once in a while, like, I mess up. But then, what was the other thing? Hold on a second. Oh, and then after that, after, the sobriety and going to AA meetings after 3 years, I started dealing with my eating disorder. I went to treatment for my eating disorder, which I was in remission for 7 years. I just got out of remission. My mom passed away. It was a key component to me relapsing, among other things. But now I try to be back on the straight and narrow. And then the relationship with my boyfriend, it just wasn't working out. So I moved, and then I went to Pottsville, and I was sitting in a parking lot, and I realized, I'm like, I don't have alcoholism anymore to numb things. That was a layer. I don't have cutting anymore. I don't have my eating disorder anymore. I don't have a codependent relationship anymore. So now it's just me, and I had no idea who I was. I just sat there not knowing who I was, and I heard something I went to an ashram, and I heard somebody say the only consistent thing is that we're a silent observer and a silent witness, and I rested in that. That's my one identity that I had, that I was a silent witness. And slowly but surely I started getting my own life, and working up there as a yoga instructor, gaining hobbies, and eventually I really started to know who I was. But there was so many layers that I had to get through, that I'm still getting through, to recovery. It's so multifaceted.
Recovery's never over. I mean, just because we aren't doing drugs or drinking doesn't mean that we're perfect. That was just our solution to our problem. That wasn't the problem. Yes. We think that was the problem early on, and then we find out real fast, like, no, that was actually what we thought was our solution to everything. It's almost like, and it was simple things too, like, the Phillies won, I'm going to drink and celebrate. Oh, they lost, I'm going to, drink my sorrows away. You always found a reason. So it wasn't the actual problem. That was just your solution to all your... So now that, we're sober, we still have problems because we're human. Yeah. And that's like, my maturity stopped at 14, like mentally, like, how do I get through this?
Yeah, and developing emotional intelligence is so important. In America, emotions and expressing emotions are so stunted, and even when people do express them, people don't know what to do with them, and they're really very invalidating. I don't want to speak for guys, so you can chime in whenever you want, that just normally, like, you have to stifle it down, and so the only feeling you're like, I'm angry, I don't know,
I used to. I'm a lot more comfortable just openly crying now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it really made me upset, like, because I'm all for everybody, being able to show whatever emotion and
Yeah.
accept that, because being accepting is what's really important, just
Yeah.
accepting yourself and accepting others. And like the Will Smith thing that came out like last year, 2 years ago, when like his wife sat down and told him like, "Hey, I cheated on you," and he was crying, and they made memes about it, and just blowing up the internet with memes making fun of Will Smith for crying. It's like you can't have it both ways. You can't tell us to be emotional and then tear somebody down while they're going through a very emotional
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That was very hard, I'm sure, for him to go through, especially publicly. And then on top of that, to have all of his emotions invalidated by everyone late night, everyone making fun of him with memes.
Yeah.
It's like how can any of us feel like we can come out with how we're feeling if we're gonna have to feel invalidated by it?
Yeah.
And so yeah, you're right. For a long time, you push it down, and then like
Yeah.
other things come up instead. It's like that thing where you push down over here, then everything comes up over here. That's like how I felt when you push down emotions, and the anger comes out this way,
Yeah.
or the self harm. And for me, self harm was getting high. Like I was
Yeah.
trying to harm myself towards the end of getting high. Like you're not trying to get high. You're trying to like hurt yourself when you mix certain things
Yeah.
together, and you know what I mean.
Yes.
So like it's hard. Life is hard, but
Yeah.
the cool thing is now at least both of us know that we can get through hard things like
Yeah.
without numbing. My I'm very open about this, but my favorite thing to do at the end of the night is I unwind my cannabis.
Yeah.
That's my medicine. I have always had sleep problems where I can never fall asleep. I always said I was a night owl and an early bird. And I would always say that. And then I finally met a therapist when I got sober. And she was like, "Honey, you're not either of those. You just are an insomniac that doesn't sleep. You're just up late and up early.
Yeah.
You just need help with sleep. You're not you're not a night owl, you're not an early bird. You just have sleep problems and you need to get
Yeah.
sleep. And this will help you." I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And sure enough, it did. Because you know how they give you all those things in rehabs, the Seroquels and all the different medicines to try to help you sleep. But then all they do is like they'll knock you out, but then you wake up and you feel like you're hungover.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point of coming to rehab to feel hungover? So I wasn't taking the trazodone and Seroquel, whatever they wanted to give out. I would only take the gabapentin because my nerves were so bad from my shakes.
Yeah.
From just coming back from withdrawal. But I was even refusing Suboxone in rehab because it was my first time in rehab so far, only time. And I knew so many people that went back and went back and went back 4, 5, 6 times in rehab. And I always would, ask them why. And like, well, it's a nice break. You get a nice break when you go. I'm like, okay. So when I went, I refused it because I was like, I don't want it to be comfortable. Because if this is too comfortable for me, I'm going to be okay with coming back.
Yeah.
So I refused the Suboxone and I withdrew with nothing, just under supervision of doctors to make sure I wouldn't die. Because, Xanax, alcohol, Percocets all mixed, coming off of.
I'm surprised I'm alive.
Yeah, I started drinking at 11 and I got sober at 31.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wasn't in good shape. I was the same weight, but I looked horrible because my face was all blotchy with rashes all the time from doing pills. Some of the pills I was allergic to, and they would always make me break out. And like hives on my face, it was so noticeable. My eyes would turn into raccoon eyes, just get sunken in, and I look at old pictures and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't. Well, there's like 4 of them I think because I was not in any pictures for a decade because I didn't want to go to anything because if I was going to something, I was possibly missing out on meeting with somebody. Missed out on so much, but I needed that to get where I'm at right now. If I didn't have all that, things go wrong. I wouldn't have had the foresight or even know that this was something that was needed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because how else, unless you're in it or you have somebody close to you. I mean, I did too. I mean, you said your mom passed away recently?
Yeah, she just died in May last year.
And she had a lot of the mental things.
Yeah, she was a hoarder majorly, and she had to have undiagnosed something or other. She just wasn't well and didn't really take care of it, unfortunately.
How old was she, if you don't mind me asking?
She's 60, lower 60s.
I feel like I've noticed that the hoarding thing, it almost comes from the generation that went through the Great Depression, and like her parents
Yeah.
would have, and because they're so afraid of losing stuff, because they've already lost everything,
Yeah.
and because I used to do plumbing, and you go to a lot of houses where there's hoarders everywhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody that I would see that was a hoarder was usually older, and it would have pictures of their parents everywhere, and that was always like, in my head, that was what I always told myself, was their parents were probably hoarders from the Depression, and it was like something that kind of snowballed into them. But that
Yeah.
just me just assuming things. Everybody's different, obviously.
Yeah. It's definitely you were talking about the Seroquel thing. It's pretty crazy. It reminded me of a story when I was in inpatient and there's a person in there and he was on so many medications and he had paranoid schizophrenia with psychotic tendencies. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Something like that. It was a doozy over one.
Yeah.
His neck was just like thick with anger. That's the best. Anyway, but it took him a half an hour to wake him up on the couch. And then he shuffled to the nurse's station, falling asleep while I was shuffling so he could take his Ambien.
Because that's what was needed. See, that's what you see a lot of an inpatient is like, I would see people high on what's it, Bufran or Wellbutrin or whatever. Like, they would get high off that.
Bipropine?
Oh.
I took Wellbutrin. Oh my god, I was cranky.
And like people would look like they were on Xanax outside. They would look like zombies sitting around like the table where we would smoke, and it would look like zombies. I'm like,
Buspron?
Wellbutrin or
Wellbutrin is a SDRI.
Yeah, SSR.
SDRI.
SDRI. Okay, yeah, that would make sense then. They were giving that to people getting off heroin.
And they also give it like Chantix. It's pretty similar to Chantix.
I took Chantix.
Yeah.
I took Chantix in rehab.
Yeah.
It worked too. I mean, I still smoke now, but it did work. By the end of the 28 days, I did not want a cigarette. I did not crave a cigarette. I smoked the entire time in rehab, but I was smoking less and less because of the Chantix. I did it in rehab on purpose, knowing that I would have supervision and therapists basically on call in case like something went haywire, because I'm new in sobriety and now I'm trying this weird medication that gives you very vivid messed up dreams, you know what I mean? So I was kind of on the fence. I was like, now's the time to do it. I was on a diet. I was cutting out everything. And then I got out of rehab and I was in my sober living. I met my sponsor and we started working on the steps. And he was like, you seem like really on edge. I was like, I'm just quitting smoking. I got my diet. I just, obviously I'm quit alcohol and pills. He was like, dude, pick one.
Hungry.
He's like, pick one. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, I need you to pick one and it can't be alcohol or drugs. But you're too new in sobriety to be trying all four of these things at one time. Yeah. You'll drive yourself off the wall and then back to the drugs and alcohol. And I was like, all right, I pick cigarettes because that will at least suppress my appetite. Yeah. So that I went back to smoking after that. I switched on purpose from menthol to regular cigarettes when I started smoking again that next day, because everybody at the AA meetings, they would bump smokes. And as soon as they found out you didn't have menthol, they moved on to the next person. They're like, hey, you have a cigarette? I'm like, yeah. And I started pulling out like Marlboro 27s. Like, no, never mind. I'm good. I'll wait. So I was like, oh, this is something interesting. I'm not going back to menthol. It was kind of like I bought them like, it was my best friend's anniversary of his death. It was the first time I was experiencing grieving in sobriety. Like, I lost a lot of people in my 20s from childhood, even a fiance, from suicide. It's almost been 6 years. Next week, and
this life will do it. Like birds of a feather flock together. I've lost quite a few friends.
Yeah, like we grew up together. Well, she was bipolar schizophrenic.
Yeah.
So, and she was an alcoholic, and she would drink till the voices went away, and it never went away. But I had to grieve her death too in sobriety for the first time. Like 3 weeks later, that's why I just started getting tattoos. I didn't have any. I had one when I was 18, like my last name. Yeah. And then I didn't get any because when you're in your 20s and you're in addiction, your money's going to one thing and that's it. Yeah. And then when I got sober, I met some cool people in AA out there that did tattoos, just amateur. And I was like, all right, hook me up. And we would just hang out in her front yard and I would get meaningful stuff. And it was like kind of my way of, it's not hurtful or self-harm, but it was a way to take away my pain.
Yeah.
It's like my thing with smacking my hand against the
Yeah,
wall. It's like,
yes.
all right, shut my brain off for 20 minutes and sketch this into my arm, please.
Yeah.
So I just started doing that kind of stuff. And whenever I came up on a date or something that was on my mind, all right, Jules, put it on me. Like, throw it on my arm somewhere. So, and I came back with like 16 tattoos like 4 months later. But, we all find different ways to, figure things out and different, like, because you're in new in sobriety, everyone tells you all these lessons and tells you all these things that you need to do and need to work on. But, like, I was such a fog for, like, the first, like, month. I picked up 2 things in the first month. Progress, not perfection. That was, like, a mantra that I had.
Yeah.
And it was my first tattoo out of rehab. The next day I was on the Venice Boardwalk and I stopped in and I got it. And then the other mantra was happiness as a choice.
Yeah.
And because I was always, I think it was my second or third day there. And my one buddy, he was like, yeah, I woke up and I chose to be happy today. I was like, can you explain that? What do you mean? You chose. He was like, it's not a feeling. Happiness isn't a feeling. It's a choice that you consciously make when you wake up or whenever you're doing something. It's about your perspective of it. You can wake up and look at the rain and be like, oh, this day's going to be awful because it's raining. You're going to find all the excuses for why the rain's going to ruin your day. Or you can look at the rain and find all the reasons why it's not going to ruin your day and put that perspective in your head. And that's the kind of attitude you roll out of bed with. And that really, obviously, that stuck with me. It still sticks with me today. It's one of those things. But those were the 2 things. Besides that, I couldn't tell you that much because you're such a, you're there, but it's like you're still like thinking about old stuff and old tendencies and habits and what am I going to do with myself now that I don't have those things? Like, my day was driven around how am I going to get money, then how am I going to see my guy, then how am I going to get it? And, that was my day. Even though I worked full time, my mind was elsewhere to that.
Yeah.
So what happens when you don't have that on your mind? It's like, what do I fill this up with now? I have all this,
Yeah.
and just got into the work.
Yeah. That's like, for me, AA gave me a very solid foundation. It was extremely helpful going through the steps, admitting what I did, going to people and apologizing to them for major things that I did. It was this relief. And to be able to, it's hard. A lot of people won't admit that they're wrong sometimes. They won't apologize. And it's just like, it made it easy. Like, I'm sorry, that was very selfish of me. I should have thought of you and I apologize. A lot of people can't do that. And like, sometimes I can tell when people actually work the AA program because they admit their stuff. They're like, yeah, that was my bad. And sometimes I don't know what to do with it. I was like, wow, thanks, and eventually I actually just recently started other programs, but before I start that, there's like another major turning point in my sobriety. I still would, pick men that they weren't good for me. They're emotionally unavailable because I'm scared of intimacy, and I'm also scared of commitment. So if somebody was the real deal and ready for commitment, I was like, eek, and I ran away. So when somebody's emotionally unavailable, then it's a way for me to still be closed, So it really took it home. Like, I always take time between relationships to reflect, like at least a year. But this time, it's been 4.5 years, and this is why. When I was in Pottsville, I thought I was changing my pattern, but it was the worst. I dated somebody, and he was a legitimate sociopath, not just saying that like everybody, oh, he's a psycho. No, like, let me tell you. Okay, yeah. So, and I saw what I wanted to see. He would constantly, lie to me. I thought he wasn't using, but he was using, just to turn into this, like, codependent, messed up thing. I was this very confident woman in my 30s, very independent, and I just turned into somebody that I wasn't, and he kept lying to me, and then he cheated on me. I was never cheated on before, and I woke up to him ODing in the bed next to me. He really couldn't lie to me anymore. It was right there. He couldn't trick me. And in the beginning, he'd open the doors for me, walk on the outside of the sidewalk, pay for dinner, just all of that. And then he just switched on me. And, the moment I turned into somebody that I realized that I wasn't is I don't think he's used to somebody like me. I'm pretty feisty. And I got up and went to leave. I'm like, whatever this. And he punched a hole in the wall and was like, sit your ass down. And I sat down. That's not me at all. Like, that's not me. You know, I went from a scrappy person and then, you know, I turned into this person. But
Did you question yourself right away when you actually sat down? Like, wait, why am I sitting?
it was the weirdest thing. I got very quiet in my mind. It was just, I think, a trauma response.
Like, you didn't know what was going to happen next either.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Anyway, fast forward, I woke up to him ODing in the bed next to me. He couldn't lie to me anymore, and I left. And it was very hard because there's the trauma bond. There's all kinds of things, a narcissist. But luckily, I did leave because I found out a year later he stabbed somebody to death in the neck with a screwdriver. And he's in Florida, which is the Sunshine State, so he's in jail for the rest of his life. But, you know, he was with another girlfriend. I know he manipulated the heck out of her. It just, that scared the shit out of me. Like, not alone that, but that I was like, whoa. And right then and there, I'm like, I thought I was changing my behavior patterns. So I took 4 years because that ain't no joke.
No,
that stuff is not a joke.
That's not. I mean,
yeah, it's
when you question yourself in addiction, it's one thing because then you can like find ways to justify like what happened with this. Yeah. I was a little drunk, but when you're sober, you really like take a hard look at yourself. Like, why did I do that behavior in sobriety when I learned to look out for that?
Yeah, and you know, that was a terrifying moment for me, and then it really took it home. I'm like, I am never treating myself like this again. And I haven't. I've been single for, like I said, 4.5 years, and I'm the happiest I've ever been, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people don't take time to look at themselves, and they hop from relationship to relationship, but then you just end up projecting all of your old stuff onto the new one and not even dealing with it, you know? So I want to change my pattern because there's still this attraction to emotionally unavailable men, which is interesting. I'm like, it's still there, for Pete's sake. And then I just wait longer, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's really officially breaking. Like, there was a moment that I had where somebody was contacting me. I'm like, here's my old behavior pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say no, you know. So
I think talking about it probably helps you too. Just even being honest with yourself, like that's even a thing. Like almost like our addictions, we talk about them so that they're right there in front of us so that we kind of avoid it. But I think the more you talk about, you know, it's the same thing. It's like doing it 12 steps, but you just change the word alcohol with emotional unavailable men.
Yeah.
You know, do a 12 step on that. You know, I helped a sponsee get over a girlfriend by replacing alcohol with her name. Yeah. And we went through the steps.
It's the 12 steps are applicable to so many different things. I use them all the time. I did, however, that'll lead to where it is. Okay, so all that, here I am today, pretty much. Is that good?
Yeah, here we are.
Okay,
yeah, now we're here. Okay. Now we're here. Now it's 4 years later. You're still single. Yeah. You're in bloom. Now I'm in bloom. I just started this, and then you reached out and came over the other day, and we are. And you know, I was in AA for a while. It just got to a point where it wasn't working for me, and I ended up just hating it. Not that I'm not appreciative of it. It was just, and I realized I was trying to stay sober on a program that I didn't like anymore. I still use it. It's just I needed new things, and I'm constantly one of those people that are learning. I'm listening to I don't know how many books, reading 2 books. Like, it's just that's what I like to do. And I think a piece of it is I work on the cognitive behavior therapy. I've been in therapy since I was 11, and there is a huge psychological component, and I think it needs to be addressed in sobriety, and sometimes that it's not addressed in AA. I mean, they're okay with that, but I'm not trying to bash AA. What I'm saying is neither am I. It saved my life when I needed it. But now it's not what I need in my recovery. I need something more open and more accepting in my recovery. Yes. AA wasn't really accepting. They were in California. They were very accepting of my cannabis use. You know, I have a medical card. I went to a rehab called High Sobriety in LA that taught me how to microdose and taught me how to use cannabis in a responsible way. My sponsor knew I was using it, and he just said, as long as you keep it in control and it never affects us, I shouldn't be able to ever tell that you're on it. And I said, deal. And I've always stuck to that, you know. And I got back to Pennsylvania, and they were like, hey, we can't have you talk about cannabis in a positive way. It could give people bad ideas or give them wrong ideas. Not everybody's. I'm like, well, that's part of my program. I'm not going to lie and be dishonest. So it didn't work for me anymore. But the steps still do. I do a 4-step every time I catch a resentment.
Yep.
You know, I have to. I do it in my head. I don't have to write it down every time. If I'm driving and I catch a resentment, I'll just do it in my head. I'll be like, all right, what's my part in it? Why am I upset? Because once I can find my part in any resentment, I feel better. I just accepted it without even realizing it. And as you know, once you accept anything, it's a lot easier to understand.
Yes, yeah. So I started looking in different recovery modalities, and since with the COVID, like a lot of Zoom meetings came out, and I just love them. When I discovered SMART, I went back into treatment for my eating disorder just recently, and she's like a 20-something. They're so young, like going into treatment programs because they're just trying to do their dues to get their own private practice. And I'm like, oh my God, girl, you look like 12. But like, anyway, she helped me with, she was a drug and alcohol counselor. She's like, oh my God, there's so many other ways. I didn't even like think about it. And then, cause I came home and my brother was there. I'm like, I can't do these meetings anymore. Like I hate them. I was becoming resentful, and that's not good. I was barely going to meetings because I would have, and I'm a bouncy thing, like I need to move. I'm super like exercisey, you gotta like do things. So I'd have to work out before I could even sit there for an hour because the only thing I would think of is I want to go. So these Zoom meetings, I discovered Smart Recovery, which it's fantastic, and I can ride my bike. I literally ride my bike and walk when I listen to them, and then I just stop, chime in, and then keep going again.
Yep.
And it's amazing. That's actually helped me with my eating disorder a lot, and I like how it's so open. You don't have to have a higher power. I have a huge spiritual practice, but I like that I don't have to talk about it with people, that it's a tool, and I don't have to hear about their stuff. It's like sometimes I just don't want to hear about it.
You want to hear my higher power? It's right there.
Yeah,
Mr. Bill Murray.
Mr. Bill Murray, yeah. And so there's all, because it's self-management, there's so many different opinions and views. I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that. And it's cognitive behavioral therapy based, and just the urges, urges usually go away within 15 minutes. I didn't know that. That was really, really helpful to me with my eating disorder.
You just told me that.
Yeah, it's like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And then doing Women for Sobriety, which is amazing. It's all about women's empowerment, because a lot of times AA just breaks you down. I'm constantly talking character defects, alcoholic. I'm like, when you introduce yourself in Women for Sobriety, it's, my name's Jade and I'm a competent woman in sobriety. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
I can't even say it right now at the moment. I'm like, hey, I'm Jade. Because I'm just used to it. But it talks about, gaining self-esteem. It's a really great program.
I'm sure it's an empowering thing just to even say out loud. It is. Saying anything out loud can be empowering. Their steps are 13 statements or whatever. So I do that. And then there's unity meetings where they just bring up a topic and then you just share on it. So those are my favorite. The topic discussions, and you just go around. That's what, I'm pretty much doing here, as you can tell already, is just throw out a topic. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Those are fun for me.
Yeah. And then here came, and it just came right when I'm changing my sobriety. And since I started these new programs, sometimes I go to 2 meetings a day. I have been to more meetings in the past 2 months than I've had in a year with AA.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. I am so much happier. And also, the thing you were talking about, cannabis sobering, I know we were talking about it yesterday, but since we're podcasting, I started smoking Delta 8. I was really scared at first. I was getting very horrible anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up with panic attacks, fear of death, panic attacks, just doomsday crap. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I started with hemp flower, which, it's from hemp. It's from hemp, and it has very, very low THC.
It's under 2.5%. Federally, it cannot be above 2.5%. It's part of the Farmers Act law of 2018 when hemp and CBD became legalized again. But it's different still. You'll get the effects, but not the full effects, which is perfect for someone like you because of just getting back into something that is a very beneficial plant if used correctly. And I'm sure a lot of your fears were oh my God, am I out of AA now? Are they going to kick me out? Am I not
That's exactly
sober?
what it was. There was guilt. I felt a lot of shame. I didn't want to go back there.
AA is good at making you feel those things even without putting them on
you.
you.
And like, when I first did it and I just smoked one hit of it. Well, first I started with hemp flower, and when I was in crisis situations, sometimes I get suicidal because I still do have all those disorders.
Yeah. And your mom just passed away.
I'm just coping with them better. And then I usually have to call a crisis worker, but I tried this and it just stopped my thoughts like instantly. Everything slowed down, not to the point as an escapism to avoid it, but everything slowed down. I cried, but I was able to look at each topic individually. I journaled for like a half an hour, and then because suicidal ideation, it comes from all these different things. It's just so much sometimes, racing thoughts, and it slowed them down so I could look at them separately. So then I heard about Delta 8, and somebody was smoking it, like one of my friends, and they were just sitting there talking about the weather, just super, calm and relaxed. And then I went to a head shop here in Bloom, and the guy was working, and he was on it right then. He's like, oh yeah, I can go to work and everything. I'm like, okay, this is great. So I took one hit, and I can't do sativa. I found out this was a hybrid. I can't even do that. But I was like, I am high. And I like panicked because in AA, and I'm like, well, screw it now. Like, I lost my sobriety. So I took a bunch of hits, but it didn't work out too well. I was on the floor. My heart rate increased a lot. Like, I felt dizzy and sick. But then I was like, what if I just did this, like, at night, like, 2 hits with the proper dosage? Because before, back in the day, like, you got whatever you got on the street. Like,
exactly. Now you can really, like, pick and choose a lot better.
And I have been, like, so far, so good. People are watching me like a hawk, but I take 2 hits at night, and I tell myself every time, I'm like, I love this. I am the most peaceful I have ever been in my life when I smoke this. I am so calm. I don't want to watch TV. I just want to introspect. I've had so many epiphanies. I can't even like express myself. It's just about my job. Yesterday I had one about, dealing with different urges, with things that my father is saying that are triggering me that I didn't notice affected me so much. I fixed a relationship because I had an epiphany about that. Like, it is incredible what it's doing for me to be able to meditate, to have guidance. I play the drums. I listen to Pink Floyd. It's fucking awesome. Pink Floyd's amazing. I just listened to Fleetwood Mac and was drumming to Tusk. I got like a hand drum and I'm like drumming to it. Like, just, I'm calm. And since I started these programs and had all these epiphanies, the people that were in my life were negative. They're just falling away. Like, I used to be friends with people pleasers, but I eat them alive. We do not feed each other very well. Yeah. I'm like, well, what can I get out of this person? Even if I subconsciously do it now, it's still like it's easy to get them to do what you want, and I don't want to be that person. I don't want to act like that. I need somebody that's...
We manipulated people in our addictive days. We don't need to do it in sobriety either.
I don't want to do that. And I realize on a subconscious level, it's like a piece. But then I lose my patience because I'm like, oh my God, will you just say what you want and you need? Yeah. Like, so it just wasn't working for me. So that's falling away, which isn't a bad thing because all these new people that are very straightforward, very direct, very cognizant of emotions are coming into my life. With all these new meetings, like I found a drive for recovery again. I am so happy. I am the happiest I've ever been in my life, just with the ability to have reprieve in the evening, number one, because I still do get anxiety, and to just have a break at night. And I cannot smoke any more than that because I get dizzy, lightheaded, and I am not okay.
Did you look into the one hitter thing that I told you about?
Not yet.
You're only like $5. Yeah.
Guys, I'm talking like I smoke too many chocolate chips at night. Like, that's how big the little, like, the Delta...
And that's what the one hitter is perfect for. That's all you're going to fit in there is like a little bit, and then you got to get rid of it because it's already used up. So it's perfect. You know exactly. Yes. It doesn't go through a hole and into your mouth like a bowl. You know how, like, if you're trying to smoke a bowl with a little bit of nug, usually it shoots through, and we call them Scooby snacks. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're swallowing the nug that you just lit up. Yeah. So one hitter is definitely going to be the best option because then you can know, all right, I get 2 pulls from this, put it away, and I'm going to feel great. Yeah. I'm just glad we started this as soon as basically you're starting a new program. I am. And it just worked out because we're so accepting of people that Like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. Like,
I don't know if this is divine intervention, but shit has just fallen into place very quickly now, and it's amazing. And I had some epiphanies about like with work and what I want to do, and maybe facilitating different trainings for SMART, like that sort of thing. I have to be in it for a while, but it changed my life. I'm very, very content now, for the most part. Every once in a while, my mental health like rears its ugly head. Like, oh yeah, I have this big, huge disorder. Like, I forgot, you know. So I still have to be mindful and careful, but to be able to go to so many programs, to be connected with so many people that I don't feel ostracized, like I still get scared, like, oh my God, because I'm smoking this, I'm going to start doing other things, and I like panic, but I'm trying to like calm myself down. And then I notice like I have different urges and thoughts, but I've always had them. I thought that I was just having them, like, oh, since I'm doing this. I'm like, no, I've always had these urges. I just never realized it.
Yeah.
Like, smell like gargling with mouthwash. It's so weird. I'm like, man, I could drink this. And I had a thought when I smoked Delta. I was like, oh my God, it's because of this. I'm like, no, man, I've thought this like 100 times.
Yeah.
That's why I don't keep it in my
Yeah.
house. Like, you know what I mean? But my dentist is like, yo, you need this stuff for your gums. But it's
can I give you some peace of mind?
Sure, yeah.
My sober date is April 25th, 2018. I did drink off and on from May 25th, 2019 till February 28th of 2020.
Yeah.
My alcohol sober date is 2/29/2020.
Yeah.
But when anyone asks me, my sober date is 4/25/2018 because that is the day that my life stopped being unmanageable.
Yeah.
When I did drink here and there in that 9-month span, it was like at night, at home, not drinking and driving, not doing reckless stuff, just pouring a Jack and Coke and watching a movie with a bowl, you know? And the only reason I stopped again was because I woke up hungover and I was like, I'm just going to, I want to, we were about to start this up before COVID hit. So I was like, all right, let's just quit drinking. Then this way we're sober for starting this. Yeah. And then COVID hit 2 weeks later. I was like, well, now we're going to really stop drinking. Yeah. So, because we both quit the same day. But still, when people ask me, my sober date is 4/25. No one can tell me what my sober date is. It's mine. Yeah. You know, it's that date to me means a lot, and I'm not going to change it because of a few drinks. Because my life didn't tail spin out. I didn't need to go back to rehab. Yeah. I didn't need to hit meetings to talk about it. I just needed to get my head straight again. Like, all right, I'm done with that again. You know, because like my life didn't tailspin. I'm not going to change my date. I didn't go to rehab again. I didn't like have to go get a newcomer chip. I wasn't like hit rock bottom. It was just a thing that I didn't want in my life anymore, so I cut it out again. Yeah. And so my sober date to me is still 4/25/2018, no matter what somebody says. I'm not trying to collect chips. I'm not even giving out chips. I have plenty to give out. You already saw my little bucket. Yeah. I have plenty of old chips to give out. People want them, but I'm not here to. I think there's a stigma on dates, and I think there's a stigma on chips and times of like pressure that people don't talk about. Like I knew people that were relapsing in their first 60 days because everyone knew their sober date. And they were freaking out knowing that I'm supposed to get a 60-day chip. Yeah. And they're in a sober living where they can just like go in and out and do some crazy stuff. And we're in LA, you can find drugs easy as a meeting. Yeah. So I knew plenty of people that relapsed in their first 90 days a couple times from my rehab because of the pressure of everyone knowing their sober date, and they would freak out over it.
Yeah, sober date is something because I still like am trying to like battle with it because to me I'm sober, but to other people I am not. So it's hard to.
But there's other people. Those are their projections of themselves usually. Like I won't wear your projections anymore. Like if you're telling me I'm not sober, you're upset that I can use cannabis responsibly and you can't. And you're upset about it, and you're going to come at me for it.
And a lot of people don't understand it sometimes. Like, I don't smoke weed personally because I still am like, oh my God, I'd probably be out of control with it. So I do just
the Delta 8.
The Delta 8.
Yeah.
And I'm not like condoning, I'm sure you don't either. Like, moderation. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like, I do a program that works for me. I don't personally drink because I'm an a-hole. I don't want to talk about myself. When I drink, it's not good. It doesn't benefit me. The Delta 8 benefits me so profoundly. I have 100% benefit from it. Besides waking up a little groggy in the morning, that's it. But
A lot less groggy than trazodone or Seroquel will give you.
yeah, and I was gonna take an SSRI, but I'm like, to help with my anxiety, but I sleep so much on them. There's one that I wanted to try that wasn't on the list of, hey, we recommend not taking this on that gene site test, and I was like, you know what, I'm very content, with this right now, so I just hoping that it maintains, and I want to be able to maintain that. And so all the other stuff like pills or anything like that, I don't want to take those because they don't benefit me any. But the only thing that Delta 8 has done is allowed me to introspect, given me several epiphanies, make Pink Floyd awesome again, and just so far it's been helping me a lot. I'm actually doing an ayahuasca retreat.
That's awesome.
In September.
Where?
In Peru, in the Millican rainforest.
You gotta do it. If you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. You're gonna do it. You gotta do it. I was gonna say, like, where? Like, where are you gonna go? Somewhere around here? And I'm so glad you said Peru. That's awesome.
Peru. I'm going. I have to get all these like shots and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A lot of the shots I need, the stuff is barely prevalent down there.
You have to come back. You have to come back and sit down with me to tell me all about.
Oh God, yeah, like. I don't want to survive an ayahuasca retreat to just go out because of yellow fever. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna get the vaccines, even though
just in case. Yeah,
just in case.
But I'm just glad that you're here and we're here for you, and you're here for us because you ran a cool meeting the other night with meditation. So that's why we started this, is to bring people into the community that were already out there that wanted a new community.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you've been reaching out and you came out and came back. The community's been awesome so far, so I just hope that it continues. But thanks for sitting down with me.